Thank you for joining Effortless Attraction. My name is Evelyn McAleer. I'm the author of A Life You Want, Effortless, and The Woman's Journey. I'm a life coach, business mentor, and inspirational speaker. And my greatest value is making a difference in people's lives. So I hope through these podcasts, I can make a difference to your life. If you would like to become a paid subscriber to Effortless Attraction, you'll find the link in the main profile. Every subscription makes a difference to my life, and you'll also receive exclusive podcasts. Thank you so much for your continued support. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, whoever gets to join in this wonderful podcast today. Well, now, I have the man of the hour with me, Declan Coyle, best-selling author of The Green Platform. It has sold millions of copies worldwide. He's director of Andak Communication, a highly sought-after keynote speaker worldwide. He has been a Colombian father for 27 years, and he is a husband and father of 3 children. Declan Coyle, it's an honor to have you here today.
My pleasure, Evelyn.
Declan, you know, whenever you go out and do your talks and you do about the Green Platform, and by the way, anyone that has not heard tell of Declan Coyle, please check him out on the internet. You know, you do your Green Platform presentations, but I want to talk today about Declan Coyle, the man. Are we all right with this?
Absolutely.
No big secrets to unravel, but if there is, we'll get them done. Declan, can I take you back then? You were ordained in 1969. You're from a county in Ireland, County Cavan.
Yeah.
And would have been a big thing at that stage to have a priest in the family.
Oh, yeah. As they used to say, if you had, what was it? There was 3 things, remember, a pump in the yard, your own bull for the cows, and a son of priest. You were made up,
Oh, brilliant. Yeah,
and
the ball, the pump, and the priest.
Yeah, they were all the key things. But yeah, it was a different era. And joining the Columbans was the simplest thing, because I grew up in a farm where the whole ethos was, if a man had a cow calving or hay down, Daddy would say, we'll go out, we'll give that man a hand. And in turn, they would come in and give us a hand when we had similar things. And I did the Leaving Cert at 16, and then I read an article in a Colombian mission magazine called The Far East about a Colombian missionary who was working in a rubbish dump outside of Lima in Peru called El Monton, and he had 40,000 people who would come in from the mountains to the edge of the city. And I simply said, if I go out and give him a hand, he'll only have 20,000. And joined the Columbans, ordained 69. And 69 was an amazing year, Evelyn, because it was a year of total change. Bob Dylan was singing "The Times They Are A-Changing." They were wearing flowers in their hair in San Francisco. They were marching in Paris. We put a man on the moon in July. And down were Ireland champions. And of course, we love that in Cavan because we beat them in the Ulster final in 69. But then on the 21st of December, I was ordained in Dalgan Park, same day as Brian Darcy was ordained with the Passionists. So then, instead of getting out to a slum, I was sent to Ottawa to do postgraduate studies. And at the end of that, I was assigned to teach in Boston. And I wrote to the Superior General and I said, look, I've had 9 years of post-secondary school study. And my problem is that I think that I know it all. But my head is full of this academic knowledge. And I said, I'm going to be passing more of that on. But I said, if you would give me 5 years in a slum in Latin America or the Philippines, where the slum dwellers who've been to the University of Life and survived, and they teach me, and I get this in my blood and my guts and my bones, once they become my professors, then I will teach anywhere, because it's not just an academic thing, it is something real. And so instantly I was sent to a slum in the Philippines for 5 years. And it made total sense, because I remember one time I had studied liberation theology, and I talked to a man who was living at Jack Hines, and I asked him at the table to talk about the suffering of the poor. And he said, I won't talk to you here. And he came up to the room, and I wrote this little poem after he left, and it was Bad News from the Poor was what I called it. A big broad-shouldered man of 45, bronzed and tanned by the noonday Negra sun, stood up, tears, hands raised high above his head, tears streaming down his cheeks, as he told me how the poor suffered. Now, I had never, ever seen that kind of feeling, emotion, tears from any priest, any professor, any teacher in my academic life. And he then, living with the people, the last 90 days, I checked the funeral book, I buried 65 children under 2 years old, all who died from hunger-related diseases. So that was the beginning of, the real, you could call it, incarnation in the lives of the poor. And then Dennis Murphy did a debrief with me at the end. He was a Jesuit, and he talked about all the great projects I'd done. He talked, Grameen banks, cooperatives, credit unions, all of that. And he said, are you a happier, more creative, more vital, more innovative man than you were 5 years ago? Or are you more angry and bitter and resentful? And I remember, Evelyn, I lost it with him, and I said, Dennis, have you heard a single thing I said to you? I just told you I buried 65 children who died from hunger in a world full of food. Of course, I'm more angry and bitter and resentful. And he paused for about, it was a minute, but it seemed like 5 minutes. And then he said very quietly, he said, if you're coming back to this slum, bring the people joy or bring them nothing, because the last thing they need is another serious, long-faced, miserable, cranky missionary priest working for justice and peace. He said, the end must be prefigured in the means. You must live the utopia you're talking about. You must, he said, if I want a Mercedes-Benz from you, you cannot give it to me because you haven't got it. If I want inner joy and peace from you, you cannot give it to me because you haven't got it. And he said, that when you know how to be present, you will know what you need to know. And he said, your presence is everything. And he said, you're still living in this toxic when-then syndrome. And I said, Dennis, what do you mean, the toxic when-then syndrome? Okay, I'll put it to you like this, he said. When, how much justice, how much food, how much liberation, freedom must you get in Africa, Asia, Latin America, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, before you can decide to be happy now, to have inner peace now, to have inner joy now? And he said, all your projects are merely the container, the contents of your inner peace and joy. And he said, ultimately, your only gift to the people is your inner peace and joy. And he said, the end must be prefigured in the means. You still don't get the Gandhi thing, he said, do you? Be the change you want to see in the world. And that brought me back to Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who was tortured in Auschwitz during the Second World War and wrote a beautiful book called Man's Search for Meaning. But Viktor said, they tortured me, they broke my body, they did operations on my genitals. But he said, they could break my body, but they couldn't touch my spirit. And he said, there I discovered the last and the greatest of the human freedoms, which is to choose my response in any given set of circumstances. He said, it's the decisions you make, not the conditions you meet. And every morning I made that choice, that one choice, to be happy. And every day in Auschwitz, I was happy because I was not going to let the conditions that they created on the outside touch me on the inside. Okay, said they killed 39 members of my family, but every day in Auschwitz, I was happy. And that, Evelyn, was the beginning of those two things. Dennis Murphy, bring the people joy or bring them nothing. And the last and the greatest of the human freedoms, to choose your response, and the ultimate choice is to be happy every day. And both of them taught me to be an alchemist. You know, the alchemist who turns base metal into gold. But from then on, I was fascinated with this idea. Whatever life throws at me, can I be an alchemist? Can I turn it into joy? And that was the beginning of the Green Platform. So when Viktor Frankl said, every morning between stimulus and response, we have a space. I call it the white space, the round white space. And in that, we have the last and the greatest of the human freedoms, which is to choose my response in any given set of circumstances. So he said, it was that I want to make that more visual, that ability to choose a response, not to be reactive, not to just be a bundle of conditioned reflexes triggered into predictable outcomes by people and events and situations, that I have a choice how I respond. And I can choose empathy. Instead of reacting, I can choose empathy, I can choose joy, I can choose compassion. And to make that more visual, I said, okay, we have the white space, and then I make my choice. And I can land on a red platform. The victim consciousness, the whinge, the whine, the moan, the complain, the poor me, the blaming other people and circumstances for my problems. And underneath that platform is a septic tank of sabotage called fear. Or I can choose a green platform, and I took the colors from lights, subliminally, red for no and green for go. And on the green platform, we have the 10 most powerful words in the English language. If it is to be, it is up to me. And it is making that choice, that to be happy every day, to find joy, that the joy inside has nothing got to do with the outside world. We never lose it, we just lose our connection to it. And I've discovered that we don't become good by doing good things. We are already good inside. And from that goodness inside, and that connection with that goodness and that joy, then the good things flow. So that'd be a very basic introduction to the bits and pieces of life that made me what I am, Evelyn.
Well, Declan, do you know what? That was not basic. That was a basic. I was thinking, wow, the rest of us need to tighten our belts a bit. No, it's wonderful to hear that, the journey. And yeah, you have went through quite a lot too when you were out in the Philippines in the slums, with the amount of people that you had to bury and the suffering and the pain to step into that world. And I'm sure, Declan, for yourself, when you stepped over there, you know, as you were saying, coming from Cavan in the 60s, and we were able to see, you know, where there was lack of in homes too. Then you moved to Canada, and then over to somewhere else. Did it give you a more deeper appreciation and gratitude of what you had in your life? Or, as you were saying, when you were speaking to the Jesuit, feeling the anger, were you able to take a balance out of that and feel the gratitude for what you actually had in your life?
Yeah, I think gratitude would have been the key, because then you realize that growing up in Dungimmon, and that you had a lot of joy, you had a lot of love, you had a lot of fun, you had a lot of caring, compassion, and you had great neighbors and a great community. And, you know, Eliot said, the end of all our journeys is something like us to come back to the place we were born and recognize it for the first time. But you recognize all that goodness. But equally, I could recognize the goodness and the kindness and the compassion in the people in the slums, because they had nothing, and yet whatever they had, they were grateful for it. And Mother Teresa put it very well one time in an interview in the States. She was asked about the terrible poverty in Calcutta, and she said, no, there's a worse poverty here in the States, because she says, in Calcutta, if a man has 2 bananas, he will give one to the person who has no banana. But you have 1,000 bananas here, and you don't give a one to anyone, you know? And it's that even what they had, they shared. And there was lovely creativity with them in the terms of the way they would, like, they loved the connection with Mary, with the Mother of God, because in their culture, if I want to say marry your daughter or whatever it is, I would never go directly to your daughter, Evelyn, but I would go to someone like Jim or say, and ask Jim to be a go-between, because the go-between, you would never go directly, and everything was worked through the go-between. And their relationship with God was Mary was the go-between. God was too much. God was too heavy. God was too much love to go directly to. But Mary, they could talk to. And that's why Mary is so popular there. But, you know, I remember one time, you know, there was a bit of vandalism in the church with a crucifix that was broken. The arms and the legs were broken off it, you know, and they came in to me and they were all upset. And I said, no, it's all about, this is life that life happening in front of us is what this is all about. And it's a response. How do we respond to whatever life? How do we respond with compassionate, loving care to whatever life unfolds in front of us? So I said, look, this is what life has unfolded, but we're co-creators. We create. How do we make this better? So I got one of the local artists to do a kind of, you know, it was a big, in-depth, like a picture with a background to it, but I put the statue of Jesus with no arms and legs. And then we, in beautiful Tagalog, the writing underneath, we've got the script. My name is Jesus, Jesus. I have no arms, I have no legs. But that is good, because you will be my arms and my legs. I have no voice to speak with compassion, but you will be my voice to speak with compassion. I have no ears to listen, but you are my ears that will listen with compassion. And I have no way of showing a kindness to the people apart from you. So you are me in the barrio from now on. And they just come on like candles. They love that. But it's that kind of a response.
That was brilliant, Declan. Brilliant. Yeah, and that is it. That's the word of God in action. Declan, while out in the Philippines too, because I do like a bit of romance, you fell in love. You went and fell, well, another love. You know, we have many loves and that there, but you met a wonderful woman. Share with us. We do love love stories now. So make it all romantic, as please.
Yeah, I was back here doing what we call reverse mission. That was trying to educate people about world debt and you know, the whole thing of the injustice, trade, unfair trade, and all of that. And so we're doing a lot of education on that, because again, to describe, like, you know, the little impact you were making in the overall world. I remember writing a poem one time. There was I called it the why of I. There was a lady, Mrs. Kelly, who used to come down to help Mammy with for the dinners and that, with the men working in the yard at home. But the poem went something like this: there's a time in a man's life when he remembers Mrs. Kelly. One day she sent me out for a bucket of water to the pump in the yard. 2 hours later, I came back in and I said to her, Mrs. Kelly, what did you send me out for? Now, as I stroll on the sandy shores of the South China Sea and look up at heaven's floors through a coconut tree, I say from the midst of the masses of the poor, God, what did you send me out here for? I fear that I shall become a Western deodorant on the stink of oppression. But that was because you saw the unjust structures. Because if I'm a 6'5" man or a 6'5" woman, and you put me into a 3-foot cage, I can say all I like to you about be on the green platform, be happy, choose positivity. But at some stage, if I really love you, I must say, I have to get you out of that cage. That's the unjust structures. So I was doing some of that work, and then I have a Columban, that I knew in the Philippines from Australia, Warren Kinney. He was doing a PhD in Birmingham, and he had an old Nissan, and his sister Annette was working as a television producer and reporter in Australia, and she was doing a tour of Europe and was finishing the tour, and he asked me, she wanted to see Ireland, would I go around with them and show them the sites in Ireland? So at Easter holidays, Warren came over in the car and we drove around Ireland, and we stayed in these youth hostels. And of course, the young people were all geared for them with had their sleeping bags and all that. But we were absolutely freezing. But we went around Ireland and lived on kind of bread and cheese and that for the week. And then Annette went back to Australia. And so she's still wondering why it took me 6 months to make a decision. But eventually, I wrote to her and I said, okay, made a decision to leave the Columbans and get married. So I said, come to London, because she was offered a big producer job at ABC. So I said, come to London, I will make it together. So I got 2 Ryanair flights, one return and one way, and I went over and met her in London. And then she went around, we were looking at a ring, and she saw a nice ring with a kind of emerald green in it. And see, I hadn't a clue about rings, because I've been living in slums, rings weren't high in your agenda. And she said, I think that'd be very nice. So I asked your man behind the counter on the glass case, how much was it? And he said £459. Now, in my pocket at the time, Evelyn, I had £39. And then I had to do a bit of creative thinking and try and convince Annette that maybe if you really love somebody, a ring doesn't matter. So anyway.
It's getting romantic by the second here too. So.
Back to a little damp flat in Dublin. And I remember the day of the wedding, we had the wedding reception in the flat, and of course no money, no nothing, because then Annette made, for the guests, Annette made a salad, and we had no place in the little fridge to put it, so she brought it up to the local Spar shop and got it in the ice cream fridge, and that began that. And then Genevieve arrived that was 1990. Genevieve arrived 93, Fionn arrived 96, and then Alexander 2004, and he's our special child, special needs with Maud Wilson syndrome. And so that's the real story. The artificial story, the story that is not true, this fiction, is I was at the wake for Dr. Pierce Lyons, the president and founder of Alltech, and it was a huge occasion in Kentucky. He was a great friend. And the Pope had sent a big wreath, and there were 4 or 5 congressmen and former governors and all that there. And Mrs. Lyons, Deirdre, asked me, she said, the congressmen are confused, and the governors, we were just a few of us left in the end. And she said, you were a priest, and now you're married with 3 children. They don't understand it. Can you explain to them? Well, I said, here's how it happened. I was in a slum in the Philippines, and I wrote to the Pope, and I said, Dear Holy Father, I would like to get married. Yours sincerely, Father Declan, this slum in the Philippines. And he wrote back to me, Dear Father Declan, every blessing on your great work in the slum with the poor. However, we have a rule since 1139 called celibacy, and you may not get married. Continued success in your work. And I wrote back to him and I said, but Holy Father, I've met a woman and I've fallen in love, and I really, really want to get married. And he wrote back to me and he said, Dear Father Declan, what's love got to do with it? Got to do with it? Got to do with it? What's love got to do with it? And then Deirdre turned to me and said, oh, he did not. And I said, no. So that's the other story that is totally romantic, but totally not true.
I know. And, I remember when I asked you about this at the start, because I'd always remembered as a young girl myself watching the Thorn Boards. And I remember you saying, Evelyn, I vowed I would never end up like Ralph de Bricasseau.
Well,
Poor old Ralph de Bricasseau.
What I always figured, Evelyn, the second best decision I ever made was joining the Columbians. But the best decision was getting married, without a doubt.
Yeah. And look, Declan, as you're saying there, it's, you have a choice on how I respond. And we would all know it. You've the only one that had to experience it. But to make them big decisions and choices, and to know as well, with the community that you're from and the family, you know, that Declan's no longer going to be a priest. And even it's not like having your notice, a month's notice into an employment job.
Yeah.
It was a big thing, massive, to make that choice.
Yeah. It was huge. And I remember, like, in making the choice, like, you know, being awake at night and your stomach sick to the core, you know, and, you know, it's then telling the family and all the rest of it. And it was traumatic in a lot of ways. But I'll tell you, Evelyn, that all the magic in life happens outside our comfort zone. And when you make a decision for whatever our intention is everything. If the intention is made with love, and I discovered that, you know, when you have the courage to make those decisions, to move on when it's time to move on, and then the whole universe conspires with you, and things all work out, and things flowed, and there was a whole new, and I'd say that whatever ministry I had at the time absolutely took off after that, because I was able to meet people in situations that I'd never have met them, where, you know, and the other thing about it, Evelyn, was that it was a huge lesson to me in the fact that it's not about you, you know, it's about people. Because I remember just immediately after I left, I had very good friends, and I had to meet them down. They wanted to meet me down around Navan. I was living in Dublin, and the whole way down, I was going through the story of how I left, why I left, all the rest of it, you know, and how I got married and that. And I had all my explanations lined up, you know. And when I got to them, they had a specific problem that they wanted to talk over. And during the time, we talked about the problem and we came up with a solution. And then they went home, and one of them said to the other, "Didn't I tell you Declan would know what to do?" And I came back, Evelyn, and I realized there wasn't 10 seconds of it about me. That, you know, if we can get, it's not about, then I realized that it's not about me. And it's like Pierce Lyons one time, like over in Kentucky, and we had about 130 people from around the world in at you know, a back to basics for 3 days. And at the end of it, we had awards for the best participant and the best presentation and all of that. But I got an award, and there'd be a medal done out and all that. I got the award for the most unmotivated person there, you know. But the thing was that once you got an award, you had to sing. And I said to Pierce, I said, "No, hold on, Pierce, I can't sing. I've never sing. I was with the Crows in school. I can't sing. I've never sang." And he said, "Of course you can sing." "No, Pierce, I genuinely can't sing." And he leaned over to me, Evelyn, and you know what he said? He said, "Declan, just get one thing clear. This is not about you, and this is not about me. This is about 130 people there who are here for a bit of fun. Now," he said, "you sing." And so I sang an incredible version of Wild Thing. But the thing was, Evelyn, that once you get out of your own way, it's not about me. That, you know, that's ego. Ego is all about you. The ego will work itself off. It socks off to keep you from your happiness now. But the ego makes it about you. When you focus on the others, and even doing a presentation, focus on the audience. It's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus called the dying to yourself to be born again into this new world. And there's that continuing dying to yourself to be born again. And I would say that Genevieve and Fionn and Alexander were orchestrating everything with Annette to make sure that they came, that they were incarnated, and that they can make their contribution. And when I see the contribution they're making to the world now, it just reinforces that decision. Now, celibacy and celibate priesthood is great for some people, and I 100% admire them for that. It wasn't for me, Evelyn.
Yeah, it wouldn't be for me either, Declan.
I can't imagine why not.
I had a notion I was going to be a nun at 16, but none of them that celibacy thing never even come into my head at that stage. But as I say, when God calls people, I had a podcast interview with a lady one day, and I said, when they talked about God calling, I was waiting on this voice. But Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll would always say, if you hear, it's it's your own voice, it's a feeling of something. And then you end up doing what it is that you love doing, Nick, because you're out there. I mean, you're talking to the world. Your book has changed so many people's lives. You've made such a huge impact. And I, for one, am a living, breathing example of the changes in my life because of our paths crossing. And I'm deeply grateful that we did enter each other's lives. That I'm so grateful for having Declan Coyle in my life. And he's my guru, and he can be an in-house comedian too. Just a man of wisdom. Declan Coyle, I want to say thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, and just for being you. You've definitely, you've a wealth of experience in this lifetime. And thank you for everything that you do for this world and that you have done, and may you continue to do it. Thank you so much, Declan.
Thank you. My privilege, Evelyn. And my final words to everyone is to be an alchemist yourself, and whatever life throws at you, turn it into joy. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I hope through this podcast that I have made a difference to your day. And if there's anything that you would like to hear in future shows, please reach out and let me know. It's evelyn@evelynmcaleer.com. And I want to wish you peace within yourself. Thank you.